Brisbane has just rolled out a smart ticketing system across its bus and metro, definitely not a metro bus service. Smart ticketing is just a fancy buzzword for contactless payment that has been in use already in other places around the world, as well as in select Queensland locations, such as the Gold Coast Tram, Queensland Rail Network, and Brisbane Ferries. This is expected to be a massive win for passengers who previously had only two options to pay for fares, either paying a premium for on-the-spot paper tickets from the few and far between ticket machines or from the driver of the bus or ferry operator, and the other option being using a prepaid transport card system that you often have to go on a wild goose chase to first obtain the card from an aforementioned rare functioning ticket machine or from a convenience store like 7-Eleven, where you can also grab a reasonably priced, not shit, $1 coffee. Prepaid transit ticket systems like the Go Card, which will soon be replaced by a new system, are quite common in other large cities such as Paris, London, Tokyo, New York, and Sydney. And even though these systems are common across the world, much like the old Internet Explorer, it's a rather shitty antiquated system that creates some other problems too. I'm Streets and Scars of City Past, and today we're going to see why this new smart ticketing system is silly, inefficient, antiquated, and how we can make it better. Ticketing is a rather mundane subject in the world of public transport, but it can influence transit networks' performance and attractiveness. As a quick example, purchasing dumb crap in the modern age has never been easier. Before the digital age, you had to physically go to your bank's branch, get a cash or check, and then go to the store, hand over the cash, watch them count it out, only for you to haul your crap back home and stash it away before your wife sees you've just impulse purchased a new Power Saw or Dreamcast gaming machine. Nowadays, you can be taking a dump while thumbing your phone and impulsively purchasing a humanoid robot off AliExpress, after which a low-paid immigrant is paid to deliver it to your door. Delicately. Unfortunately, public transport's ticketing has not kept up with such great leaps in convenience, and I know buying a product is different to paying to access a service, but you get the gist. The prepaid go-kart ticketing system introduced in 2008 was supposed to improve the convenience of purchasing public transport tickets to speed up boarding and simplify the fare tracking system, which it did to some degree. Although it was even hilariously easier to abuse such a system because before the now 50-cent fares in Brisbane, you could board any bus, train or ferry provided you had a positive balance of at least 1 cent. People of course boarded the train with 1 cent and went as far as possible on the train, which was around a $20 fare, leaving the card $19.99 in the red. At which point people just tossed the card away and bought another one for $10 that previously came with $10 credit preloaded. Utilizing the Go card is quite simple. You tap the card on when you enter a bus, train, station or ferry, and tap off when you subsequently leave. Rather simple, right? Well, this medium of ticket purchasing hasn't kept up with the modern world, and it also leads to another legacy issue regarding ticketing, and that is proof of payment. When you tap on a bus or ferry, it's usually done right in front of a ticket inspector or driver in order to prove you're valid to travel. This may not be a problem for trains where boarding is done separate from tapping on or off, but it is a problem for stations with ticket gates and buses with limited space. Even though the system costs millions to purchase and administer, it sometimes takes about 1 second to register, or sometimes not at all, subsequently requiring you to do an awkward bash of the card reader whilst everyone looks at you like some kind of special case. 1 second may not sound like much, but multiply that by 20 people getting in and out, all trying to tap on and off, compounded with a few false readings, and you've got yourself some good old pedestrian congestion. And that congestion at a bus stop can lead to extended dwell times. Dwell time is the time a public transport vehicle will wait at a station to drop off, pick up passengers, or slot into a tightly controlled track section. Dwell times are calculated into timetables, ranging on average from 15 to 40 seconds for buses. Now, if you have congestion at your entrance and exit doors waiting for people to tap on and off constantly, your bus could become more and more delayed. And if they become delayed enough, you will get bunching on your network. Bunching in public transport refers to a situation where multiple vehicles on the same route end up arriving at stops close together, instead of being evenly spaced as intended. This often happens with buses or trams and leads to irregular service, with long wait times followed by several vehicles arriving in quick succession. Now, it should be made clear that it's not just dwell times that cause bunching, it could be other kind of delays such as waiting at traffic lights or other disruptions in the network. However, to improve dwell times, Brisbane has moved towards front and rear boarding to spread the load. That still does jack shit to facilitate faster boarding because our buses are still designed like it's the 1990s with only 2 doors on a standard vehicle, while buses in other countries with the exact same bus suppliers have 3 or more doors to speed up boarding and improve passenger flow. Even the stupidly stretched superbus only has 2 doors. So if you really want to wreck your dwell times, take a high-capacity bus and only put 2 doors on it.
Here's what happens when they all try to get through the door at once. Move it, Johnny.
So, if you combine large numbers of people boarding and deboarding a bus, all trying to tap on and off, you run the risk of unnecessarily delayed buses. Now, in the case of train stations without fare gates and just card readers at the entrances, picture this. Your connecting bus to the station is 30 seconds late. And just as you're coming up the stairs, racing to get into your train, you see a crowd of people all trying to tap on or off, and unfortunately, you've got to be that guy that pushes past everyone tapping on and off to get to the train. Those valuable 4 seconds pushing through the gaggle of people lining up in a concentrated area is just what you needed to make your train. Sorry, you're about 5 seconds too late. I know what you're thinking. It's just unfortunate. Be punctual next time.
Skip your morning shit.
My answer is
No.
proof of purchase isn't just a massive pain in the ass and affects dwell times, it also detrimentally affects station design and network usability. Ticket gates are generally implemented in high-traffic stations where thousands of people pass through daily that can justify automatic ticket checking from gates. And here, passenger flow is extremely important in peak times. Like the buses, 1 second of registration time really stacks up when you have hundreds or even thousands of people moving in and out of the space of a minute before and after a train arrives. Building and corridor design boils down to one simple question. How many humans need to squeeze through the space without turning it into a chaotic mess? Getting it right is crucial because buildings aren't cheap. And if you think hiring a handyman to just knock out a few walls in an underground station is an option, be prepared to pay a premium. For an example of how a few fare gates can disrupt even the tiniest group of transit-paying alpha chads, just have a look at these masked members of Patriot Front being good citizens, tapping on at the fare gates.
Why do we go to Trump?
Dang it, my card ain't working again. What would happen if Elon was in charge? Something. Dang it, let me try your turnstile.
Can you see the build-up, even in the rather quiet off-peak times? Often faregate lines are set for single-direction uses, and therefore, even though the station is empty, the entrance is now artificially halved due to the other side being only for exit, instead of letting the pedestrian flow naturally decide which direction has more space to maneuver. So having to account for faregates and station design presents dilemmas in pedestrian flow problems. Do you plan for stations' accessibility and high pedestrian flow significantly increasing costs? Or do you minimize the gates and entrances needed, funneling everyone into limited space, also restricting disability access options to keep costs down? Because with fare gates, basic quality of life features such as direct street to platform level boarding with elevators is difficult. Narrow fare gates can easily become overwhelmed in peak times that can really affect pedestrian flow. But making wide gates for passengers is very space intensive. Also, if you happen to be in a wheelchair or have large luggage with you, yeah, suck shit. You can only just use the main fare gate with disability access, instead of the numerous smaller passages that can't facilitate a wider gate. With regard to buses, the responsibility to check proof of payment falls on the drivers, which often does not go down so well and is quite a futile exercise. I have seen a bus driver try to enforce payment, but passengers often refuse to show their ticket or tap on because delaying the bus to throw hands isn't in the bus driver manual. Their only remaining option is to just push the fare evader button, yes, that's a thing, and hope someone comes. A fundamental reason why we have fare gates is to recoup costs. But what if the system you use to recoup costs costs more than the cost you are recouping? There's a tongue twister for you non-native English speakers. This brings me to my next point. Would anyone like to take a rough guess how much it costs to implement the new smart ticketing system in Brisbane? Anyone? Well, it cost nearly $500 million for the rollout alone. This doesn't include the future cost of maintenance, but I can't imagine it would be cheap if it's going to a foreign company in America. That is fucking obscene. More obscene than the language I use, and more obscene than the dumb metro, definitely not a bus, metro costing $1.5 billion. I can't seem to find the cost of maintaining the system, so please let me know in the comments if you can find it. It's no surprise these card readers cost so much. They're effectively a giant bulky piece of infrastructure that needs to be wired through all buses, ferries and stations. And there are thousands of these buses, stations and ferries that need to be retrofitted. It's a very expensive system just to collect 50 cents fares. As mentioned before, the gate systems and drivers are supposed to check proof of payment. But here comes the old age question. Who checks the checkers? Nothing quite beats good old Davo roaming around checking tickets the old-fashioned way. So, in addition to fare gates, there are roaming teams of fare enforcement officers making sure people have tapped on or are using the right concession card. And yes, they also have the power to arrest you. So if you ever see a guy getting arrested in southeast Queensland by fare enforcement, you know you're dealing with a flog. Remember how I said people try and ride the train between minor stations that don't have fare gates? Well, they check those routes too. And they of course check buses, especially now that rear boarding is possible in Brisbane. Even with fare gates, fare evasion is prevalent, evidenced by the constant cat and mouse game the MTA plays with people jumping turnstiles. So we know that fare gate ticket systems are disruptive to operations of network performance, degrade station pedestrian flow efficiency, is not a watertight proof of payment system, and costs a shitload of capital and operational expenditure. But is there any better option? Let's look over at the DACH region, which stands for Deutschland, Germany in German, Austria, and CH, Confederatio Helvetica, or Switzerland for short. I know other countries in Europe don't do proof of purchase gate systems, such as Czech, Poland, and other Eastern European countries, but I'll focus on DACH region for now. You can travel across these whole countries without going through one fare gate for public transport, except some mountain transport in Switzerland. The first thing you will notice when compared to the gated systems is how easy it is to transfer between services and move through the stations. The trains there carry a lot of people and it can be mayhem, but pedestrian flow is smooth, unlike in London where getting off a busy tube line is like being funneled for slaughter. Also, you're much faster out of the station, and when you're dragging bags around, you don't need to juggle your bags to do that awkward reach into your pocket to pull your wallet out just to tap your card, then race through before the gates close. Okay, but how do I buy a ticket without fare gates? Well, two main options. The first one is buying from machines and in selected buses and trams on board. However, the machines are also being slowly reduced in numbers as most people have shifted over to the second option, mobile digital ticketing. It's 2025 and nearly everyone has a smartphone. You can just download their app and buy a ticket, or purchase one outright directly on the website. If you're asking if you need to buy a ticket every time you get on board, such as when you're transferring, well, the answer is no. First of all, the unified ticketing system across these countries covers all modes of transport necessary to complete your journey. And in the DACH region, there's something that's very common that Australia in general needs to get on board with, pun intended. And that is ticket subscriptions. Ticket subscriptions for gateless networks are amazing because more often than not, without one, you often forget to buy one, especially when you're drunk. But with a subscription, you don't think. Just get on. When I cancelled my transport subscription due to a change in job location, I often forgot to buy a ticket myself. And subscription tickets are highly preferred by transport companies because it allows them to forward plan financially rather than guessing how many tickets they'll sell in a day. For this reason, they're often much cheaper than purchasing single trip or daily tickets. You can also get a whole of country subscription, and in the case of Germany, a highly subsidized national transport ticket valid on all transport except long distance trains for only €50 per month. Similar in rationale to the 50-cent fares in Queensland. But in the case of Switzerland, they've implemented something like the aforementioned smart ticketing systems. Instead of tapping a card on and off, you can simply open the app, activate the ticket, and when you finish your journey, deactivate the ticket. It will calculate your fare. A rather simple concept of digitizing all the physical infrastructure to the confines of your phone. You've got the convenience or more of a Go card, but no stupid tap on, tap off, and an app costs a shitload less than physical infrastructure to maintain. But how are ticket systems enforced, if they even are, you may ask? The answer is yes, they are enforced, through random spot checks. Honesty plays a strong factor in the ticketing system in the DACH region, but punishment is big for dishonesty. In Switzerland, approximately 3% of trips are without a valid ticket, and being caught without a valid ticket will cost you 100 Swiss francs plus the fare, or approximately 179 Australian dollary dues for the first time. Subsequent offences is up to 160 francs or court proceedings for repeated offences. Now, I can just hear you all in the comments saying, this won't work in Australia because we're a low-trust bogan society that will abuse anything that's perceived as free, and all that lost revenue will be expensive. And you wouldn't be wrong. People take advantage of this honesty system in Australia would bleed the government of limited funds due to lost revenue, ergo higher costs. But the cost argument of lost revenue against a full randomized spot checking system doesn't stack up when compared with other costs of public transport systems. Now, ticket pricing helps recover some of the system's costs, though it's not designed to generate a profit or break even. Public transport is a service for the community. While fare revenue contributes some income, the primary financial burden comes from infrastructure investments and operational costs. Think back to the rollout of the new smart ticketing system. Didn't it cost nearly $500 million? Well, on the back of a napkin calculation, you could employ about 250 ticket controllers per year for the whole 20-year lifespan of the go-card system implementation cost. And that's for the Brisbane system alone. Likely Sydney and Melbourne are in the same boat, who also have extensive faregate systems such as the Opal and Mikey card respectively, that are constantly being upgraded and modernized every 2 decades. Thing is, it's not about the money.
I made over $550K last year. How much did you make?
It's not about money.
Governments knowingly and willingly lose billions each year in operating transportation networks, with capital expenditures further adding to the cost of this essential public service, one that ultimately provides a net benefit to society, much like other public goods such as hospitals and schools. I know some of my American audience might gasp at a loss-making public hospital. That's generally why they're called public services. In the case of Queensland, they chose to spend an extra $300 million over a year to reduce all fares down to a flat 50-cent fee no matter how far you travel. That $300 million is lost revenue from transport ticket sales. But even with the comically low cost to ride, people are still evading fares that cost the government an extra, get this, $1,663 in lost ticket revenue. Yes, you heard that correct. The government lost about the average monthly rent of a Brisbane home pre-2020 worth of ticket revenue. Which further begs the question, why bother with fare gates or fares at all then? If a public transport is so cheap, why not just scrap fares altogether and make public transport free? Well, the short answer is just because a public good is expensive does not justify the rest of the system being profligate. Profligate meaning me at the blackjack table. All in, baby. Basically, it means wasteful. For example, whilst Dubai police may be buying Lamborghinis for police cars to flex on criminals, any other country's finance department of the police section would be raising eyebrows as decision makers justify purchasing a hypercar to do often dangerous, destructive work, with the reasoning, it's a public service, bro, it doesn't need to make a profit. That definitely won't fly with taxpayers. $300 million plus 1 month's rent is not an effective use of limited public funds just to make a shitty public transport palatable. Because whilst capital expenditure projects like a smart ticketing system is expensive, $300 million can get you a whole lot of improvements in the public transport network. But if you stack that up over 2 or 3 times, you have enough capital to build just over 1 kilometre of light rail, or 2 houses in the inner city Brisbane. Cheap or free public transport is a hot topic, and I won't go into it in this video, but be sure to subscribe because it will be the basis for a future video. Fare gates are expensive to run, but without proper enforcement of the system, jumping turnstiles becomes normalised that often nosedives your fare revenue line as there's no punishment for not buying a ticket, or it renders your proof of payment system mostly redundant. So a purely faregate system is open to abuse and a hybrid faregate plus enforcement is redundant. Why not just go fully to a randomized spot checking honesty system? Well, it's unsurprising that randomized spot checking cannot check nearly as many tickets per minute as machines do, and they certainly do not go down well with a team of personnel pushing through a crowded train trying to check tickets. But that's okay. Busy trains are generally full of commuters who pay the fare, and even those who don't pay. The revenue from paying customers far outnumbers the lost revenues from those without tickets. Not to mention that even though Queensland fares are 50 cents, the penalty for not having a ticket was not reduced and still remains at $322. That's approximately 644 50-cent trips covered in just one fine. But having prevalent ticket controllers presents another opportunity. Strong evidence suggests that the public embarrassment of fare evasion is enough to discourage most people from riding without a ticket. Additionally, an increased presence of controllers reduces the prevalence of antisocial behaviour that is very evident on public transport in Brisbane.
Suck me off the next station, please. Suck my dick so hard. And I say, yay, yay.
There's no doubt that gateless randomized spot checking is more open to abuse than gated systems, but without the expensive gated systems, randomized spot checks won't hurt revenue and operational expenditure much more than the gated systems themselves. So if gateless and randomized spot checking would cost roughly the same as a gated system, why bother with changing the system? Well, as mentioned before, gateless randomized spot checking provides many other non-monetary benefits such as faster boarding, cheaper, more agile digital ticketing systems, and the opportunity for more dynamic and open station design without having to segregate the ticket zones from non-ticket zones. Gateless systems are so much more than the individual rate of return for ticket checking and revenue. It's the whole user experience of public transport. You plebs not in Europe will have no idea how amazing it is to bounce from train to tram to bus without having to awkwardly juggle your wallet. I can akimbo carry beers around the whole country without interrupting my precious drinking time. I fully understand that aged pensioners who aren't tech savvy will have trouble figuring this stuff out. But we have so many other options to help them grasp the digital age. Or, here's a crazy idea, give them free public transport. It's already free for them on off-peak times, and they're such a small demographic, it really isn't that much of a problem. In conclusion, whilst TransLink thinks they're stepping into the 21st century with flexible contactless payment terminals, they've really missed an outdated metric for transport usability. Government's already shown that recurring transit fares isn't the be-all and end-all of survivability of a system. I'm confused why they would purposely shoot themselves in the foot by requiring clunky fare gates that threaten pedestrian flow and dwell times in high-traffic stations or buses. It really is an outdated system, and indicative of the type of thinking Australia is stuck in when it comes to public transport. Something as simple as boarding a bus or a train could be so much better.